that awful giving somebody a name like Paul?
like Robert Roberts?
Yeah. Probably got one of those too on him. I don't know.
So do you remember your grandparents at all?
Oh, yeah. I took care of my grandmother. I said it's just all reversed. Kids have to help with me, and I took care of my grandmother and I took care of my mother. Both of them before they died. So I said, and then people talk to me like I don't know what I'm talking about, but you learn a lot, you know, when you have to work with somebody like that. And Grandma, other people couldn't work with Grandma because she couldn't talk English. She was still talking the broken Swedish, you know. And the only way I could do, when she wanted groceries, Grandpa could talk good English. But she'd tell me what she wanted him to bring for groceries. And then I'd have to figure out how to spell it and write it down, because she couldn't do any of that. But I'm so mad at myself because the one thing that I should have been remembered was the buns or biscuits that she always made, and I only know one place in Phoenix where I've been that they make them like that. So they must be foreign people, but it's a mining camp restaurant out. We used to go out there ever so often. I don't know if you were ever out there or not, but it's way out of Apache Junction.
Is there a special name for those?
Huh?
Or is there a special name for those biscuits?
Well, I don't know. Of course, mine, you know, we have rolls that we make, and they're butterhorns. They don't call them that. These would be this high, you know. And but out there they'd have, I'd get, so I couldn't hardly go out there because they were like they were old mining camp, and you sat at picnic tables. Well, my back was so bad during that time that I couldn't even stand to sit on a bench, you know, and everything. But we used to go out there quite a bit. It was probably an hour's drive, something like that.
Now, what was your grandparents' names that you took care of?
Johnson.
Johnson. That was
Swedish. And I'll tell you something else that's happened. This is the kind of stuff I just don't understand why. But Mac worked for everybody, you know. That's what he did. He was a repair plumber. And he had an old couple that lived up on 32nd, and they had a big apartment house. He was always and forever getting called up there. And he'd go at night because they didn't care what, you know, and he liked them. They were nice people. I sometimes rode along with him, so I had met her quite a bit. I don't remember meeting him. I don't know. But anyway, their name was Lindstrom. Well, now we have Lindstrom Car Wash right down here. And how many people have you ever heard of named Lindstrom? And it's a Swedish name. I knew it was. Well, this house sold in July. The people that moved in there, their name is Lindstrom. I said to them, his wife, because I saw her out in the yard, I said, you know, Mac used to work for a couple by that name. And I said, and I just feel like it's the same couple. Oh no, there's more than one family, Lindstrom's, and she wasn't very happy that I brought it up for some reason I hadn't figured out. But anyhow, so we had a Christmas party. Barbara Palmer always has one. He came over and sat down beside me, and that's the first I had met him. He says, you know, that's my grandparents that Mac worked for. I said, I knew it was. I knew it was. Now look at that. All these years, they've been dead and gone.
So what do you remember about your Swartz grandparents?
Not as much. Because if you remember, your Grandpa Swartz never said anything that he was supposed to, you know. But there's a lot there now.
Because he left them when he was younger. He left them. When
Yeah, he was only 14, 15 when he left and went to Iowa. And then, of course, he was in the First War, so there's a picture of him in there. I don't know where that picture came from, in there on that bookcase when he was real young. And you can see your dad in that picture. So, but the thing of it is, Dad had those blue Branson eyes. See, Branson is the background, really. Mm-hmm. And I have them too, but I never paid attention. But everybody's always saying, you got those blue eyes. And I wanted Elaine's brown eyes so bad, and I thought she had such pretty brown eyes. And she had the brown and I had the blue, so. But the brown came from the Swartz side of the family, and the blue is from the Branson. And I see where in the paper this morning, or yesterday, that they had a plane, that the runway is so long at Branson that a plane almost went off the end of the runway, and there would have been a deep, some kind of a crevice there or something. I'm telling you.
So did you spend any time down there in Rolla at all?
Well, the thing of it is, the folks used to go down every fall and pick pears. They had a pear orchard, and that was what they made their money lived on, you know. And so they'd go down and help pick pears. But I never stayed there by myself like I did out
in Illinois.
Illinois. But see, I went to school out there too, so that made a big difference.
Is that where you lived when you took care of the grandparents?
Yeah.
Illinois?
I lived with them in the great big house.
That was in the Roseville area?
Yeah, it'd be the closest. Well, no, Berwick was the closest town. A little worse than Reasoner. But it was just a farming community. And Abingdon was where Aunt June used to work, in an insurance office. And that's how she she was working in Hartford when she retired. Hartford Insurance in Chicago. But most of those people I can tell you a lot about, but I was surprised. Kathy said she asked Mary Woody, what is her name? Mary
Engel?
that lives at Pella.
Van Zandt.
Yeah, She said that people think she looks like me or like my mother. Kathy looks like my mother did when she was young. And Mary Van Camp, whatever her name is, she said, you know who you look like? You look like Aunt Nan. Well, Kathy never was around Aunt Nan that much. It was Bob was the oldest, and then Aunt Nan was. So, and Aunt Nan moved to California and lived there for 20 years before she ever came home, even to visit. So, yeah, I suppose there's a lot of stuff if you think about it, but I don't know what kind of stuff you want.
How old was you when your mom died?
I was...
you college age?
Well, Kathy and Ed were 4 and 5, and Mom had said she'd take care of them. That's all I had was those two at that time, and she would take care of them if I wanted to go to the state fair. Well, that state fair never turned me on like it does Nancy, but anyhow, so I left Kathy and Ed with Bob a whole day. I've often thought about that when because they were young. They were only about 4 and 5 years old. They had to have been. And she died, that was in September or whatever they have the fair. But she had been diagnosed then with cancer, but she never told anybody. And all winter long they would come out when they could, if the roads permitted. and spend a day with her and bring her something, ice cream or something, you know. Well, Priscilla then was born in whatever it was. It was the next year. So she wasn't born yet, so that's pretty easy to figure out the date on that. So, see, Kathy was born in 50 and Ed in 51, Priscilla in 52, so 52 is when my mother died, so.
What do you remember about what she was like?
Oh, yeah. Very strict, but not as bad as Dad. I was telling them the other day, everybody laughs when they see me in my lipstick. I said, I don't see what, all the older people now are wearing lipstick. I like it because otherwise my lips get so chapped I can't hardly stand it.
You're just trying to fit in, right?
Yeah. So, anyhow, somebody said, there's a nurse up at St. Joe, a black nurse. She's so nice. And she says she just waits for me to come in the door with my red fingernails and my red lipstick. And, I don't know. But I said, I was 14 when I started wearing lipstick. And to catch the bus from Reasoner to Newton, I was in high school. And the boys... And I've always called them the boys. I guess you know who I'm talking about. But anyhow, the boys would walk over to the Jay's store, or Lamb store, and wait maybe with me to get the bus. I don't know why they were doing it, probably just to be ornery. But anyhow, they'd go home and tell Mom that I had lipstick on because she wouldn't let me wear it, or Dad wouldn't either. So she'd just have a fit if they went home and told her that. I got so disgusted, so I'd wait till after they went back home and then I'd put some on there. But anyhow.
That wasn't because of chapped lips back then.
No, I guess it wasn't. It was just an excuse. So, the boys, by the time they went to high school, there was no bus left. It had either disintegrated or whatever. Went down one hill backwards, in a snowstorm. That was a bad hill. I still think of that every time.
Where was that? Do you remember?
Yeah. I was trying to, it was just before you get to that hill and would have to turn. You have the double turn and the double hill. Charlesworth lived on the left-hand side as you start up the hill. But if you go up the hill and come this way, then that's Browns live down on the corner. Maryland's people.
Oh, okay. That's closer to Newton then.
Yeah.
Okay. I know where
they were about halfway, I think, to Newton, Browns were. And I don't know who lived back east there. I don't know that I was ever on that road. After you turn and go up the hill, then we had to turn again. And Wildcat School or church, whatever, or maybe both, we sat right there in that corner.
On which side of the corner? Northeast?
That would be the southwest. Yeah, it'd be the southwest corner. And you're turning that corner. Maybe they've redone the road by now, you don't know. But I know one storm, and that's before I even knew the Brown family. They had us end to get warm because the bus couldn't make the hill. And that was, I don't know, and then you see that bus quit, and we rode the cars, different cars. In fact, I rode with Mom. She was working then at, it wasn't Wind Power. No. Not Newton Manufacturing, that's where Nadine worked. Oh, it began with a V.
Vernon Company?
Vernon, yeah, that's where she worked. So
How long did she work there?
She worked there most of the time the boys were in high school because it cost so much. We had to pay for books and everything like that. And when I graduated from high school, I could have gone right out and taught then. You can't now. But
wow.
You didn't have to have all that education. And but you see, all those aunts in Illinois, my mother the oldest, and there were 7 girls, and all but one of them went to the same college that I went to.
At
Brown's Business College. But Alma was a nurse. She didn't do that kind of thing, but all the rest of them went there. And it was enough between. There was only 10 years between Ines and I, and it was close enough that some of the teachers were still teaching there that she did. So I can remember them really making a big deal out of the fact that somebody's niece was going to school there, you know, and everything.
Where's that at?
Galesburg.
Okay.
I don't know if it's still there. It was upstairs. Up. You had to climb along the stairs. And it was right on the square, but it was... I just doubt that building even still there. You know, the old brick. Sometimes it did.
Yeah, sometimes they save those buildings and use them for something else.
Yeah.
So what were all those sisters' names?
Well, I could tell you most of them. Because Mom was Clara Josephine. That's where we got the Josephine for Sarah. And then next was Aunt Nan, and her show, it's Nancy. Nancy, well, I'll think of it. One of them is Wilhelmina. I wonder if that was it. And then who's next? Oh, Alma. Alma was the nurse, and she was, I think, Alma Matilda or something like that. And then Aunt Hulda. Hulda, what was their middle name? Hulda Regina, or began with an R. Some of that will come to me when I'm trying to. I didn't sleep all night, so I'm good for that. I've been up since I went to bed last night and never slept. And who was Hulda then? So then there was 5 girls, and then it was Uncle Edwin and
Ernie.
His birthday, of course, and David's is the same day.
Whose?
And Mary Woody.
Ernie's or Edwin?
Uncle Edwin's was January 10th.
Oh, okay.
And Dave's is 10th, and Mary Van Zandt is the 10th. There was 3 of them. And then John, we called him, but his name was, I bet you don't have this in your records. His name was Alfred Valentine Johnson. And his birthday was on February 14th, I think. Or if it was awful close.
Is he the youngest?
No. There's another boy, our Uncle Ernie. Ernest Emil. That's where
That's where
got
Emil
the
came from.
Yeah.
What a mean thing to pass on.
Yeah. So, and then, of course, Keith's middle name is Edwin from...
what was Grandpa's middle name? It was
Elmer.
Elmer? Okay.
See, they're all...
Sounds like a farmer.
Oh. I don't know if one of the family's middle names were Elmer or not, but Dad's was Roy Elmer.
So how much time did you spend in Reeser and how much in Illinois?
Half and half, probably. It didn't seem like it then, but I started going to Illinois at Christmas time one year. I was only in about 5th grade. And I liked it out there better than I did at home. And of course, I was somebody they could tease, you know. And they had some good ones made up, believe me. The one that I remember, and it was not the truth, but they had a big yard, about as big as this thing, and they mowed it by hand. and but they talked me into doing the seat because they thought I needed the exercise. I suppose, I don't know. But anyhow, they said it cost quite a bit because she'd eat a banana every time she'd go around, because I thought bananas were the only thing there was. She'd eat a banana every time she'd take a lap around the yard, you know. So they just wanted me there to have somebody to tease, because there was still Uncle Edwin, and Uncle John was in the service, so he wasn't there very much, only just when he came on leave or something, you know, before he got married. And so we did quite a bit of cooking. Like I say, I could just, makes me so mad. The only one that I've forgotten is those rolls or biscuits or whatever, but we ate the same thing 3 meals a day. I wonder why the guys don't complain, you know, but they wouldn't say anything. We'd have fried potatoes, and so, and then of course I got in on the Christmas cooking then, that way. I started in young, and there's a story connected to that too. A lot of this stuff, you're going to get me talking. You'll get tired of listening to me.
I don't think so.
Avery, you know, Avery and Esther, yeah, they're the only relatives we had in Iowa. And of course they always lived on one of those old long lanes, and you couldn't get up if the weather was bad. Many times Avery would have to come down with a tractor and pull us, so that, because whoever turned, they took turns, Mom and Esther, on Thanksgiving and Christmas, and whose ever turn it was, no matter what the weather, they had to get them up to the top of that hill, and there'd be a mile up there in one of those places. But Avery liked that lutefisk, and even then I didn't like the smell of it. I just can't hardly stand have that stuff cooking in the house. It makes it smell. So he said he wanted me to make it, and I said, I just can't, because it's very expensive. You got to buy it. You have to cook it for 3 days and watch it all that time. Well, what else? I said, well, and it takes butter. Well, I'll buy the butter. So Avery bought the butter. Well, the next year Christmas came, and Keith wanted it. And I said, Keith, I can't afford to buy that butter, because butter then was really expensive. And Keith says, well, why don't you try margarine, or whatever we called it at that time? And I said, okay. Just like the girls here trying to use the wrong kind of margarine, and they don't turn out. And that fish cooked in that margarine, and the smell, you could hardly stand it. And anyhow, Keith says, well, how come you bought that cheap butter anyhow? And I said, well, I thought it was, you know, be all right. So I never did that again. I always bought good stuff, and I've told these people here, these girls that I taught here how to make the rolls, use the brands that I use, because we know of one person that had a funny experience with it, and that was the cousins down at Chandler. And one of the girls there had made my rolls, and they couldn't understand. They said they were so hard when they took them out of they couldn't even bite them off or anything. So I said, okay, next time you're going to make them, I'll stand right there, I'll see what you do. Everything went smooth. They had every brand that just like I use. They got to the end. Here she comes with a thing that you use to beat up bread. You know, electric and so forth. That was it. They were beating the poor bread to death. See, in Galesburg, and Alma and Ted had Nancy, another Nancy. And she was probably 10. I don't know, there's a picture of her in front of the fireplace that I hated with a passion. They were terrible things to clean in those days. Now I suppose it's probably just electric, but anyhow, that was my job by room and board. So, and I would study every night and and I'd take care of her. They were social people, you know. Alma and Ted were probably the only ones in the bunch, but anyhow, and then there was three of them all the same age. There was Lawrence and Virginia and Nancy. And they were all within a year's time. They were all the same age. So, of course, they'd run notes, you know, and keep things going.
Are these cousins or brothers and sisters?
Cousins.
Cousins.
They were all, well, not Lawrence. Lawrence, there was 5 in his family. But Virginia and Nancy were only children, so. And Virginia was always had something wrong with her, mostly her back and stuff. But and Nancy she was a nurse too, like her mother.
I knew Lawrence. I knew Lawrence.
Did you?
Yeah, he was a character.
Yeah.
He always had plans for trapping Santa Claus.
Did he ever get it done?
No. I remember the last year that I saw him, he said, "I got her figured out this time. I'm stretching a net across the fireplace." But Dad always talked about how ornery the boys on the farm were.
Yeah.
He told a couple of pranks they pulled on him.
Well, they had that it was the old house that they lived in when they moved on the farm. Just like now you'd call it a shack, you know. But then they stored all their equipment in there. And like in the wintertime, what they weren't using and so forth. So, and then while they built the big one. And it was built in the early 30s. Most people couldn't afford anything like that then, but they did. And they had some neighbors that, I don't know, I'm probably the only one that remembers her, but Grandma couldn't stand her. And of course, nobody could understand Grandma, so that worked out. Well, to get to their house, and don't ask me why, in the wintertime, they would go out there just to, sound like something Judy would do here, to go Flagstaff see her parents or something. But we'd go, Dad would take us, and of course he had to have good tires and everything because he was on the mail route. So he could get through where nobody else could. So before we got to this last stretch, we had to go up a hill. And people that lived there were their closest neighbors. But that old woman, she had to know everything down to the last detail. There was nobody like her. And they had the kind of phones, you know, they had then. There would be 8 or 10 people on the same line. So everybody would listen in, you know, me included, if I got bored. And Grandma didn't much, but probably because she couldn't have understood a lot of it. Grandpa did, but he didn't listen, so. But all he did was he'd sit there in that chair, and I don't suppose there's a picture anywhere of him sitting in that chair, but that would be priceless if there were, but I don't know. I haven't seen one, and if you move that chair, oh, look out, because it had big windows. It was a very modern home for them. And it had big windows so he could see up the hill to the mailbox. And so whoever was there, if he saw the mail come, which when I was there, I had to do it. And it was up a hill. Everything was up a hill. But anyhow, and one day I thought, well, now if this chair was sitting someplace else, it'd be handier for me to see out those windows. So I moved it. Well, right in front of this chair was a library table. We called them then. I don't know what you call them now. And then his chair. Boy, I tell you, did the fur fly. He wanted that chair and that table back where it was supposed to be. Mama worked for the United States government during World War I. That's how she met Dad. Oh. And
where did they meet at?
They ended up meeting at Rock Island, Illinois. There's still a base there. I don't know if it's got a name. It probably has, but they met there. And then they sent him to, where'd they send him to? Must have been in the Des Moines there. But there had been something in Des Moines.
Oh, yeah, Camp Dodge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she went to work in Des Moines. Mom did. Well, after Uncle John was born, that is his name. It's Alfred Valentine. And was it Ernie or June? June. Aunt June was born. And her name, whatever your records say, it's supposed to be Junie, Junie, Junie Carolyn.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Huh.
And she always worked in the insurance business. She was ahead in Chicago. And then Ernest Emil. Some of them I remember, I guess because they're so crazy.
They probably used their full name when they hollered at them.
Yeah, I bet they did. And then Aunt Ines was the youngest. But I tell you, Aunt Ines ruled with a whip or something or other. And Uncle Edwin used to tell one morning he didn't get up like she thought he ought to, or on time or something. And she went in with some kind of a belt, I don't remember now what, and cracked him across the rear, and he said he got up. So she saw to it those boys. They all three had the same bedroom. But it was big. Heavens, as big as our whole house. It had that one huge bedroom, and that was the three boys. And then the guest bedroom was the one I took over when I went there to live. And then there was another one that was even smaller than it. And then Grandma and Grandpa's was a big one too. They had a big room. I like I say, I went there every Christmas. And what I had to go through at that time of year to get there, you wonder why I even, because we had to go to, there's some little town, what is that little town, that I had to go to, and then from there I took either a bus or a train. But like I say, to get to, at Christmas time, to get out there and then get back again, and I was going to school, I couldn't miss school. But I did that for many years, I'll tell you.
How did you get out there?
Well, I took, it was either a bus or a train, but I think somebody had to take me. There's a town begins with an L. It was close to the Reasoner, or close. Somebody would take me that far.
The Linville?
It seems like it was close to either Oskaloosa or Ottumwa, and I know one time weather was so bad, and we sat in the depot in a dirty old thing, and had to wait, and it was cold. They would what you go through when you're a kid, you know. But I was surprised Mom let me go.
Was Dad out there when you were out there then?
No, I
No?
never. No.
They could only handle one of you at a time?
I guess. That's probably it. See, I graduated from high school in 42, and I went right from high school to school in Galesburg.
Did you get finished that, or did you leave to take care of
They
that?
had different deals you could take, like the shortest one was a year, which is the one I took. And then you had to pass all these tests. And you had to be able to type so many words a minute. And shorthand, they don't even use shorthand anymore, I don't think. And you had to be able to, and then I think what kept Mom interested was because I would send her a letter and write it as much as I could in shorthand. because she had taken the same thing, and it gave her something to, to think about. So she'd answer back in shorthand. So she just was too sick for. And see, after her grandma died, I took care. They called me. I don't know how much you know about the cultures in Europe, but all the ones I know about, the oldest person in the family, like I was the oldest grandchild. Mom was the oldest of that generation. And you were to see to it that if they needed help, but that was their way of living, that somebody had to take care of them. So when Grandma got sick, well, to begin with, she fell down the basement stairs and broke, it was her wrist, I think. And because I had to, every day, 3 times a day, I had to soak her hands, and then I had to work every finger to get it kind of like what they do now, only, and I got awful tired of that, but anyhow, it was just something that had to be done. And she did this like in the fall. Well, I had been working in Des Moines at, was that the doctor's office or the insurance company? One of the two. And so everybody was saying, well, they can't get, well, Grandma would have been impossible for anybody to work for other than her own people, because she couldn't understand English. So anyhow, they kept saying she needs somebody there. Well, I felt obligated because even though it didn't cost them hardly anything to send me there, but Alma figured out what she could cook for and feed me, how much and Edwin was going to pay for it. Well, I think she come up with like $4 or something a week, which was nothing, then. So anyhow, so that's the reason I was babysitting for Nancy Tucker, because to help pay for what I ate, I guess. But anyhow, so I was there for if it was October, I don't remember for sure, but in July, I had it, I know I had, and they had a huge yard, twice as big as long as this one, and he had to string up a bunch of more clotheslines because Grandma was going through everything, and I can see now what happened, because I was doing the same thing. But anyhow, so to keep the laundry going and doing all that, I told him, I said, you got to put some more lines up. Well, I think that was the time we got into it. I told him, I said, I just can't, we got to have more lines because you can't get them clothes dry, if it was damp then, and so forth. And so he put them up grudgingly. But I thought, I just need to get out of here and go home for a few days. Well, in that 2 weeks after I left there, she died. So that took care of that. By that time, John was home and had married Marie. And where did they live when they moved? All I can think about is that old woman that was nosy. She was terrible. She'd get on, and that last year that we went at Christmas time, and Dad had to stop there and get help because he was stuck on that hill at her house. She got right on that phone, and she said, they're on their way, they'll be there pretty soon. I could still hear her. Dad was so disgusted, Anyhow.